This will just be the bloopers edition. This is our third time trying this.
I'm sorry, I can just not get myself together. I'm going to be giggling. Oh, my word.
Ladies, welcome back to the No Higher Calling podcast. I am joined with Sarah Boots from Faithful and Flourishing for another tea time chat. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Yes, always a pleasure to be here.
So we have talked about a lot of things, and it's been so much fun. I am loving these. But today is really special because we're going to talk about books, which is something that we are both extremely passionate about. And I laughed. I sent you the list of topics because, we can't talk about all of our favorite books. So we had to narrow down. Like, we've got 5 topics here and our favorite books in those topics. But I sent you my list first. So I got to pick the books first. And then I think you came back with... I picked all your, right?
You picked all of my books. So we've got a little bone to pick, and we can take care of it off episode if we need to do that.
Sarah, not over tea. No, but hey, you know what this tells the listeners? These are really, really good books. You want to read these.
Yeah.
And I also think you've been able to come up with some other ones. So
oh yeah, I mean,
nice variety.
Yeah, it's not hard to come up with good books.
No, actually, it's hard to kind of scale that down. So if you here, buckle up, get your phone to take a note, get a piece of paper and a pen or something. You're going to want to jot these down. I'll actually list all of these books down in the comments too, so that hopefully that'll make it easier for you to find them. But I think we need to just jump in because all of mine are physical books. I literally just looked at my bookshelf and pulled from there. So like I said, these are not the top of the top because I've got books on Kindle, I've got books on Audible, I've got books on Hoopla. There are a lot of things out there, but this is what I pull on my shelf. So my stack is quite tall. So we're just going to jump right in. And the first topic is our spiritual walk with the Lord, Christian living, our faith life. What are books that have greatly influenced and impacted us? And the first one for me is A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23 by W. Philip Keller. I read this book, oh goodness, it might have been a 2020 read. I had a sweet friend who had read it and said that it greatly impacted her parenting because as she was learning how God, her shepherd, so lovingly guided and corrected and nurtured her, that was helping her as she was trying to reflect that in her parenting of her children. And so I dove into this, and it was really funny because I've grown up in church. Psalm 23 is one of the first passages you learn. And so I felt like I came to a psalm that I knew well. And then I read this book and I learned so much more. One of the really neat aspects of this book is the author has experience being a shepherd. So he draws from that and pulls out these things that David would have known as a shepherd and brings such a depth to the illustrations that God gives there of him being our shepherd. And so that was just so eye-opening. I actually did a whole series going through this study on the podcast a few years ago. I can link that down in the show notes too if you want to check that out. But that was just sharing what God was teaching me as I spent a year meditating through Psalm 23. So this book was so good, and kind of springboarding off the idea of studying attributes of God, studying his character. This book has been such an impact. What Do I Know About My God by Marty Collier. I picked this up when I was a teenager and read through it, and the Lord used it in my life to really challenge me to learn more about who he was. The whole kind of idea, it's not like necessarily like a book, cover to cover, I'm going to read this information. She has some in the beginning, but the whole idea is helping you create this notebook where you write down attributes of God and just start writing out scriptures that go with each one. So my God is love. My God is comfort. My God forgives. My God wants me to be content. You have all of these headers, and then you're just putting scripture under that. So I did that some in my teenage years. I picked that up again later in life when I was really struggling through several different trials. And God used it to literally transform my thinking. And I can honestly say my life has never been the same since. It gave such an awareness of the character of God and a desire to see him in everything that I was learning and reading from his word. So those were two that God just really used in my life personally to help grow me and to deepen my relationship with him.
Yeah, both of those are really, really good. Kind of jumping off of what you said about looking for God in your devotional life as you go to the Bible, that is so key, and that is so transformative, I think. So just understanding, and that's something, man, that's something to train our kids, because a lot of times when they're young, they struggle so much with, my devotions are boring. Mom, I'm so bored. I don't like this, but when you can train them to, you go to the Bible and you look for God. And so just kind of piggybacking off of that is my next one is Glimpses of God Revealed Through His Names by Debbie Pride. She's a wonderful author. I love her books, especially if you're leading ladies Bible studies and looking for KJV books for your church. Her books are wonderful for that. But this one in particular, our ladies group has not done this yet, but it's coming up. We're going to be doing it soon. But this one just is a Bible study about God's names. She hits on 12 common ones, and it is so, so good. And you can do more. You don't, after you learn how to do the study, you can just continue it on. And it's just, same thing. When I first did a Names of God study, actually it was before I read this book, but doing a Names of God study changed my life. And that was where I really learned how to go to God's word, looking for him, looking for his character and what he is to me, and just realizing how much he loves me and cares for me and pursues me. And there's just so many things that he is, period. I mean, he's just so good. And so books like that are so helpful. Also, another couple, I love the author, Rosalind Goforth, and her books. She was the wife of Jonathan Goforth, and they lived in the 1800s, of course. And it's so interesting how her stories are so relatable. And I just feel like I'm right there with her, and I get you. And even though, she talks about motherhood and being a wife and being busy in the ministry, and it is all so, I don't know, relatable is the best word I can think of. But it's just so good. And one of my favorite things about, I have two here, I'll share them in just a moment, but one of my favorite things about both of them, and I think she talks about in both of them, is learning how to walk in the Spirit. And it's funny because she tells a story in there, and she talks to some pastor. I can't remember his name, but he said, "You're the wife of Jonathan Goforth. How do you not know how to walk in the Spirit?" And she said, I just don't know. And when she finally understood what that meant and learned what that meant, it just completely changed her life, and it changed mine too. And she actually, I think it's in, so we have this one, how I know God answers prayer. And then this one is Climbing. Both of these are really good. I think I actually like this one better, How I Know God Answers Prayer, but they both kind of go together. They're just their memoirs kind of. But I believe it's How I Know God Answers Prayer. She has a whole Bible study at the end of this book about walking in the Spirit, God's presence, God's purpose, victory through him, God's provision. Anyways, just so good. And one, actually, maybe this is the reason why we had to record this 3 times. When we were going through all this, I just remember Praying the Bible came to mind. And that was not one I had mentioned earlier, but that is transformative.
That's Donald Whitney, I believe.
Yes. I had never learned to pray the Bible until I was an adult. I don't know why. I don't know if I missed it somewhere along the way. I don't know if it was never taught, but that is transformative, realizing I can use God's words to speak back to him. Of course, I'm praying in God's will. If I'm literally praying his words, I'm praying in God's will, and he promises to answer his prayer. when we're specifically praying in his will. So that was just a transformative book as well. I have another one, but actually I think it will fit better a little bit later. So I'll save that.
I'm so glad you mentioned Praying the Bible. I think that's one that's on my Kindle, and I haven't touched my Kindle in quite some time. I'm a hard copy kind of girl if I can be, or an audiobook because I'm a busy mom. But yes, that one was so good and greatly changed my life. All right, marriage is our next category, which both of my books that I have to talk about are by Gary Thomas. He is kind of one of the leading authors, I think, right now on marriage. I believe he is a Southern Baptist pastor, but he has really just poured his life into the ministry of encouraging marriages. And so he has such a wealth of wisdom to share from his own personal experience, from his experience helping other couples. And Simeon and I have gleaned so much. We read both of these. I read Sacred Marriage early in our marriage, and that's been like over a decade ago. That's hard to believe. We just recently read Cherished. We might have read that a year or two ago. We did a whole podcast episode, lessons that we both learned from that. We're currently reading his book, Making Your Marriage a Fortress, but they're so good. Sacred Marriage is great because it really talks about the sanctifying work that the marriage relationship can do in our lives. I think marriage and motherhood are the two things that really more than anything have revealed my weakness, my inadequacy, my sinfulness. Sometimes in those crucible relationships where you're with people they see the real you. There's no faking it in these relationships. You can see areas where you need to grow. And so he talks a lot in his book about how that's not a bad thing. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for our marriages to make us more like Christ. And the beautiful thing that can be as we, in our marriages, get to reflect Christ and the church. Then in his book, Cherish was really good. Simeon and I love this. We read this one together, which is something that we have enjoyed doing at different points throughout our life, whether it be a marriage book, a parenting book. Once it was The Hobbit. That was more Simeon's enjoyment than mine, but we read it together. We love reading things together, especially these books that are challenging us, they're stretching us, they're growing us, because it really gives opportunity for a lot of conversation, a lot of kind of analyzing, hey, how are we doing in this area of our marriage? How could we be better at this? Different things. But Cherish was really great because he talks about how in our marriage vows, we say to love and to cherish. What does it mean to cherish? He gives the illustration of a ballerina and how everybody loves to see the beautiful ballerina up in the air, twirling around, her grace and beauty on full display. But that she could not shine like she is meant to if it wasn't for the male counterpart that is holding her up, is lifting her up, is her support structure. And so he used that really on both ends of the spectrum for husband and wife. That is what we are to do in marriage. He shares that often in the dating season of life, the infatuation is so strong that you just have these blinders on, or we might say the rose-colored glasses. You are not critical of anything. You overlook things maybe you shouldn't overlook. Maybe there are red flags that you see, that others see, and you just are in love with this person, so you're not willing to acknowledge that. But unfortunately, then oftentimes we come to marriage and all of a sudden we are critical. We are negative. We can even let that go into bitterness and resentment. And he said that it is not to be that way, that the dating phase is when you need to come to it with a little bit of a critical lens. Is this the person that God wants me to spend my life with? Is this a person that I can join myself? Are we headed in the right direction? Are we equally yoked? Our pastor one time talked about how that doesn't just mean a believer and a believer, but you can have two people who are saved, who are not headed in the right direction. Are we both 100% committed to the Lord? And then once you are married, he says that the husband becomes the wife's Adam and the wife becomes the husband's Eve, meaning there are no others. There's no option. We are committed to this for the long haul. And I loved that aspect of Cherish because life can get busy. We can get distracted. Sometimes we get in a rut in our marriages. And this book really challenged us to, are we investing in our marriage like we should? Yes, we love each other, but are we truly cherishing each other and delighting in pursuing the happiness of the other person. So those were two that just really were impactful for Simeon and I.
Mm. Yes, those are both Cherish. I read Cherish years ago, and it was so good, and I need to go back and revisit again because I can't remember what it was, but I remember it impacted me. So
Yeah.
well, since you stole my marriage books, I
sorry, I mean, they're just gonna where else do we go?
It's okay. I wrote, you mentioned this, but Gary Thomas is such an amazing marriage author. So I just wrote all things by Gary Thomas because he is one to read for sure. Another one, His Needs, Her Needs. I don't know. Have you read that? I know I talked about it a while back. I don't know.
I believe that I have. Yes. I know that Aaron Bates has shared that one too. So I'm pretty sure I read that. I think it's been a while though.
It's one that I refer back to quite often. And it's His Needs, Her Needs. So he covers the five most critical needs for men and the five most critical needs for women. And they're kind of blanket statements. I remember when I was talking about this a little bit on Instagram, someone messaged me and said, well, that actually, one of the needs for men, well, that actually is one of my needs. And the point is, it's not going to be this way for every single person, but in general, these are the five needs of men and these are the five needs of women. And so I don't even read, or I think I've done it once maybe, but I don't even review or read the her needs part. I read the his needs part because that's what I need. And so I love just having that framework of, okay, our marriage is struggling a little bit right now. Is he good? And this, and this, and this. So the five that he mentions are physical intimacy, recreational companionship, being an attractive spouse for your husband, domestic support, just making home a place that he wants to be, and then respect and admiration. So if there is an issue, and I honestly can tell you, I'm not going to say it, but if I feel like there's a struggle, I already know it's one of those. There's one in particular, and I know, okay, we need to work on this. So just having that framework and just almost like a checklist in my mind, thinking through, where am I as a spouse failing? Okay, let me put a little bit more work into this area specifically, and we'll be fine. Another one, and honestly, this is not really one of my favorites per se right now. However, I think it's worth noting because it is so important for when you're getting close to marriage or when you're a newlywed. Intended for Pleasure by Ed Wheat. In fact, any books by Ed Wheat, they're so helpful, and just going into detail of everything you need to know, and it's very good. So I'm sure there's more I can add to the list, but those are some favorites.
Yeah, great. Well, that leads us into the topic of motherhood, which was hard to narrow down. The two books I picked, I did this a few weeks ago, sent you the list, and then I was gathering my books yesterday, and I went to my shelf and I was like, I could just, motherhood might be the topic that I've read the most on, because I feel like that's an area that I just really need wisdom. But I pulled two that really have just helped kind of shape my thinking in some things and challenged me as a mom. Before I do these two, I do need to share everything I've ever read by Sally Clarkson on motherhood has been gold. The Lord brought her into my life just through her writing years ago, early in my motherhood journey. And it really helped guide my thinking in a way that I felt really aligned with God's desire for motherhood, and just the importance that is. So these are not Sally Clarkson books, but that's just because I'm blanket statementing, like anything on motherhood by Sally Clarkson is going to be great.
One thing about her too is her writing is beautiful. So her, it's a joy. You have your books that are just like, surface level, and then you can pull some things out, and then you have your books that are, you're pulling things out, but the writing is beautiful too. And that's one thing I appreciate about Sally Clarkson. She just
and they're so descriptive
so well.
and cozy. Like you just and your tea and yes. Honestly, I would think maybe as an author, she has impacted my thinking more than any other author outside of obviously God's word.
Isn't that amazing?
And I think it just entered into my life when I was a young mom, trying to figure out how to do things. What is my purpose in this? What is my mission? How to balance the things, how to find joy, how to get direction. Where are we trying to guide these kids? And she just stepped in with biblical wisdom as a mom who was further down the road and was able to share, this is what God has taught me every step of the way, and I am here to cheer you on. And so that has been so helpful. So pick up all of the books. You will be so glad you did. But the two that I have to share, this one is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So this is the 5 love languages of children. You probably have heard of the 5 love languages. It's a really big marriage book. It's another one that Simeon and I read that was very helpful for our marriage. But this one makes it very specific for our children. What are the 5 love languages? You have touch, you have gifts, acts of service, words of affirmation, and what am I missing, Sarah? What's the 5th one? Gifts, quality time. Quality time.
The one that's most important in our family, and I couldn't remember.
Yes. And so it goes through this, and while everybody enjoys receiving love in different aspects, some people tend to feel loved from one way more than another. I am a words of affirmation girl. I love when Simeon puts a note out for me, when he writes me a letter. It is so sweet. I keep them all. That is special. I have a daughter who is a words of affirmation girl. When I know she's struggling, when we're dealing with something at home, my written word goes so much farther than my spoken word. And actually, just the other day, we were having family devotions, and a card that I had written for her, this has probably been a year ago. We were struggling with something in her life. We were really just clashing over it. I, just kept on kind of coming down on her. And finally, the Lord is just write out a card of encouragement that I am praying for you specifically in these few things. And I did that, and it's still tucked in her Bible. It fell out on the floor the other day, and she kind of was like, nobody touched that. That's special. Let me put that back in my Bible. So in knowing that gives me, at being a student of my children, particularly in this topic of motherhood, that helps me know that, yes, I want to hug on that child. I want to spend quality time. I want to buy them gifts. I want to, do all the things, but she really feels loved with my words. I have another child. They love touch. They want hugged and kissed and snuggled. And so they're the one that, hey, we're watching a movie. I'm going to, again, not to the neglect of the others, but I know that fills this one's cup. And so it was really insightful for me to learn this, and then to realize I can love them better if I am loving them in the ways that they receive it most. Again, while they often appreciate all of the things because they're all signs of affection from mama, it's extra special. It's extra meaningful to them. It sticks with them more when it is their love language. And that's been something that I've been praying really over the past probably year and a half, is that God would really help me be a student of my husband and my children. That I would, in the busyness of life, that I would take the time to know what makes them them. How do they work? What do they love? What do they not like? How can I better love them by being a better student of them? And so that's one thing that the Lord has really used to help me in that area. The next book is Time Saving Mom by Crystal Paine. Crystal Paine is known as Money Saving Mom. This is really just a practical everyday. It has some spiritual nuggets in there that are super great. She talks about flare prayers, how in the midst of busy, crazy, hectic schedules, how desperately dependent we need to be on the Lord, and He is a prayer away. If I'm feeling overwhelmed with the chaos of the day, instead of stewing in that, I can just call out to God right then and there. Lord, enter into this moment with me. Give me the strength, give me the power. She talks about praying for your day. That is a practice that I've implemented when I pray in the mornings. I pray through my day. I literally have my schedule, and this is what's happening, and then this is next, and that's next, and this is Simeon's schedule. That has been very helpful. But this is more just kind of a practical, the time-saving mom. I think we all feel like we need more time, but God has perfectly chosen to give us 24 hours, and what, 8 probably of those should be spent sleeping. So that means what he wants us to accomplish, he gives us a time for. So she really just shares some practical strategies of how we can be the best stewards of our time, how we can redeem the time. And that really just resonated in me, being a mom of a lot of littles, homeschooling, having lots of things on my plate. I want to serve and give from a place where I feel like I'm thriving, not where I'm constantly depleted and, I mean, we talked about this, not loving my life, living a life that I love. This book has helped me live a life that I love.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It makes you have a life full of joy. And when you're constantly coming from that depleted state, it's hard. It's hard and it's not fun. So, my book that I have for motherhood is Parenting with Mercy by Michelle Brock. And honestly, this was a book that I really, really needed. When I was a new mom, I was very overboard. What do they call that? Authoritarian or something, like almost like it's my way or the highway, almost. I don't know how to describe it, but I was really too strict. I was overly strict and didn't show love. And Parenting with Mercy was an eye opener for me. And I desperately needed it in those early years. And I need it now, but you know how it is. As you grow, you learn, oh, this is how I need to handle this situation. Anyways, it's less about parenting and more about imitating Christ. And as you already mentioned with the Shepherd's Look at Psalm 23, the author kind of looks at how our Heavenly Father handles his children. And then she applies it to how we should deal with our own children. So it was really, really convicting and challenging because, again, it was just the Lord has a way of putting exactly what you need into your lap when you need it. And that was one I needed desperately. And speaking of putting books into your lap right when you need them, I came across the book, The New Strong-Willed Child, right when I needed it. That one's by James Dobson, and still applicable now. But back then, when I first read it, I mean, I remember specifically chapter 2. I cried through the whole chapter because when you listen to the audiobook of this, chapter 2, I'm probably saying the wrong chapter, but I'm pretty sure it's chapter 2. It is an interview of a panel of moms who all had strong-willed children. And it is just, the tears were flowing. And it wasn't just my tears. The moms on the panel, they were crying too, because, it's just so hard. And when you're in the thick of it with one that's a tough one, you feel like you're never going to get out of it and you're never going to see fruit from the labor that you're putting in. And truly, the verse Galatians 6:9 is truly, be not weary in well doing, for in due season ye shall reap if you faint not. And it felt those years. In fact, we did a whole podcast episode on it actually, but it feels like you're never going to reap. And if you just stay faithful, you will, like the Bible verse says. And thankfully we are, I can't say on the other side of that, but we have finally seen fruit from those early years when you're putting in the time and literally it feels like it's getting worse. There is no, anyways, I don't want to say too much. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, and it's been a really long time since I kind of revisited my motherhood journal and things from back then. And I'm so thankful that we have seen growth that we were praying for back then. And so, anyways, the new strong-willed child is, I think it's called the new strong-willed child because I
Mhm.
think it's probably an updated version of his
I
original
think
book.
so. Yeah.
So, but the new strong-willed child was, that's the version I read, and it was so good and so needed. And again, so many tears, but it was what I needed.
Yes. No, I can completely say amen to that. I read it. I needed it. I probably need to revisit it. But yes. And I remember that conversation we had. We talked about strong-willed children. I need to find that in the archives and put that. The comments in this is going to be really long with
I
all the
know.
podcast references and all the books. But hey, it's really great stuff that has been helpful for us. So speaking of books that have turned into a podcast episode, that leads me to our next topic, which is health. The Hormone Repair Manual. I need to give some context here, but I did a whole podcast on this called I think it was Setting Ourselves Up for Future Health Success. So this is for perimenopausal, menopausal age group of women, which I am not in yet. I'm still in my 30s. But this is by Dr. Lara Bryden. She had written the Period Repair Manual, which is my season of life. And I read that several years ago. And it's so funny. I think I read it after having my third child. So I had been married for 7-ish years, 6, 7 years. I had had my third baby. And this book taught me things about my body and how it worked that I had no idea as a married mother. Like, I could not believe I was in my 30s and learning these foundational things about being a female. It
Right.
really blew my mind and it challenged me. I have 4 daughters. I need to do for them. But anyway, the Period Repair Manual was very good and helpful for this season. And it goes into so many different things that women struggle with. I mean, it talks about the design for the female body, how the cycle works, all of that. It goes into PCOS, endometriosis, all of these different struggles. I love her approach because her initial kind of knee-jerk reaction is more of a naturopathic, holistic approach, but she also gives medical and surgical advice as well. So you as reader come to it with, I felt like, true, reliable information on both sides of the coin, and you get to make the educated decision on what's the best thing for you. And I really appreciated that very neutral take because I feel like when you come to health, it's not always that way. So I really appreciated that. I will say she is not a believer, and that comes through in her writing. It's been a while since I read Period Repair Manual. I don't remember walking away from it feeling like it was super evolutionary. This book I did walk away from feeling like, oh man, you are missing such a huge piece by not having a biblical worldview. You know so much about the female body and not pairing that with God's perfect, beautiful design. As a believer, I felt like there was a huge piece lacking. She did write another book called The Metabolism Repair Guide, I think. And that one was even more so. I walked away from that feeling like, wow, I had to really dig through a lot of evolutionary. So in the 3 books I've read of hers, that was my least favorite. But with this one, why do I say that I like this one better than this one when this is my stage of life? I feel like so much of what she talked about in this book, you do not want to read when you are in your 40s and 50s. You don't want to read it when you're starting to go through menopause. You want to read it now, like my season in your 30s, before that season comes, because so much of the symptoms and the struggles of that transition, she almost calls it a second puberty of life, can be alleviated, maybe even in some completely avoided, by the health that you set up for yourself while your youth is more vital, or not vital, but vivacious, while you have the opportunity to tone your muscles, to, support your body, to get good rest, to eat good food, so that I'm not coming to a season in another decade or 2 and I'm like, wow, things are really wrong. I'm way off track. How on earth do I correct? Do my best to stay on the path now. So that was so helpful in a health sense. Sarah, I know this is really your big genre that you have focused a lot in recently. So you'll probably have some really good books to share here too.
Yeah, so I'm really interested. I know we've talked about this before because I have not read the period repair manual, but I felt the same way about the fifth vital sign. And actually, that's not even
That is
on my list.
currently on my nightstand.
Yes, so I'm really interested to see how those two compare.
Yeah.
I felt the same exact way reading through that book, just having like all these moments of how did I never know this? And even, I mean, my daughter's a little older than your kids, so we kind of started the talk, the cycle talk and all that a couple of years ago. However, as she gets older, there are so like I want to train her how to track her period. I want to train her to how to know exactly when the window is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just there's so many things that I want her to know that I just learned. What in the world? And like you said, I'm in my 30s too. I'm pushing 40. And what in the world? How am I just learning this? But the importance of realizing that your period is literally a fifth vital sign. Oh, I can nerd out on this. So I don't know if you've talked to anybody about this, but just I'm working with a hormone coach right now, and she's Mennonite, so I so appreciate being able to number one have a creationist and biblical worldview talking with somebody like that. So that's one thing I really appreciate about her. But we were just chatting recently, and she said, as my, do you take your temperatures every morning?
Well, yes, in the windows where I have not been pregnant.
Yes.
Often.
I forgot. But yes. Yeah. So what is crazy is she said as your hormones and your cycle repairs, your temperatures smooth out. Now there's going to be, you're in the 97s and then it goes up to the 98s and then it drops. However, it's not spiky. And the crazy thing is when I take the charts and put them back to back, this past month has been so smooth. And there's a reason why, because I started drinking red raspberry leaf tea. Okay. I thought that was for pregnancy and it's for hormone, which I learned from my next book that I'm going to talk. Anyways, so just crazy story about that. Except I don't think I should get into it here. I'm going to share about that on my Substack. Anyways, so the red raspberry
Sarah for more.
Exactly.
Have you read Taking Charge of Your Fertility?
No, but that's another one that I know
it's like that thick. That's where I learned about cycle tracking. So if you're like, what on earth are they talking about? I mean, I think you mentioned that the fifth vital sign has a lot of that. Period repair manual has some, but Taking Charge of Your Fertility goes like incredibly in depth, every question you could think about, and talks about how to track.
Yeah, that's kind of how the fifth vital sign is, but it's not such a thick book. I mean, I don't think, because I actually listened to it, but I don't think it was super long like that. But just the fact that your cycle is your fifth vital sign. Cycle should not be super duper painful. You should not be spotting way before. You should not have a short luteal phase. I mean, all of these things that I have experienced. I'm like, wait, I thought this was normal. This is not normal. No, it's not normal. If your daughters are experiencing terrible cramping, that's not normal. It's a vital sign. It's saying, hey, something is wrong. And it's our bodies are doing what they're supposed to do. God is so amazing. I get so excited about God when it comes to health. Like you said, all of these books are missing the point of our amazing design, our amazing designer, who just gave us this miraculous design. Our bodies were made to heal themselves. And when we have an issue, it's saying, hey, something's wrong. And that's exactly what our periods are doing for us. And we do not have to go into our cycles like, oh, here we go again. It's a beautiful design. And once you learn about it, you can truly appreciate what your period is telling you about your health. So it has just been fascinating. Anyways, that book was not even on my list. What was on my list, I've shared about this recently. These books, I mean, I'm going into these books. Okay, let me say these books. Okay, Be Your Own Doctor. Be Your Own Doctor too. Your child's pediatrician, and Backyard Pharmacy. Okay, these books are so good. Especially in sick season and stuff, I'm referring to these weekly, if not daily. My daughter was sick beginning of January, end of December, beginning of January, and I was using the flu tea out of here, and that's where next to it said, so we were all drinking it, so we wouldn't get sick, but she had the flu. And next to it says, this can also be used for hormones. And I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to keep drinking it. And so I kept drinking it. And oh my goodness, anyways, saving that for later. So these Be Your Own Doctor books are just fabulous. I mean, she tells you where she teaches you how to make all kinds of things. But they're just so good. I mean, if you've heard of like garlic salve and stuff like that for sickness, she talks about all of that in here. And again, she's Mennonite, so I appreciate, I mean, she has a whole section on raising children like in the way of the Lord and stuff in there. So they're just really, really good books that I refer to often. And then is that all I had on my list? One thing I was going to say is the thing about health, it is my desire to someday write a book that covers all the things, but from a biblical worldview, because that's what I want to do for women, because I know so many people just avoid reading all those kind of books because they're so filled with evolution. The evolution drives me nuts, but then you have the new age things, especially with the quantum health and circadian rhythm, and that's becoming more popular, and a lot of new age stuff is coming out of that. And my biggest thing about health is this stuff is the devil has been doing this. He does this with anything that is good. He takes it and he twists it. And as Christians, so often we say, no, I'm going to stay away from that. And it's like, whoa. Let's look at this from a biblical perspective. God created our bodies to heal. He created the sun to help us. He created the earth to help us. He created our bodies to work with the rest of his creation. Yeah. And eating the herbs of the field that he created for man. It talks about that in Psalm 104. He created these things for our bodies, and we have come the devil has used the health industry the food industry and the health industry to bring Christians away from what God created us to be. Anyway, so that's just a huge passion of mine. Another book that I am actually in the middle of reading. I appreciate this book because it's based on the Bible. It's called What the Bible Says About Healthy Living by Rex Russell. And this book is really, really good. So I can't technically call it a favorite yet because I'm not all the way through it, but it's really, really good as well. And I appreciate that it's from a biblical standpoint.
Yeah. So I have Be Your Child's Pediatrician. I do not have the others because they are so expensive here in Australia. But you reminded me. My dad is coming in September, so I'm going to have him.
I'm going to send you. I need to send you the link because these are very expensive, but I found them. I think they're over $30, but I found them for $22. I need to send you the link.
Okay, well, they're like over 100 here on Amazon Australia. Crazy. So 20, 30, that's totally doable.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving. Yeah.
Sorry, really quick. I had the Be Your Child's Pediatrician forever, but it drove me nuts because it kept saying, so you need to refer to Be Your Own Doctor. So refer, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And finally I broke down. I'm like, I'm getting that book. So what ended up happening was I got Be Your Child's Pediatrician. That's a wonderful book, by the way, for giving to new mothers. So I got that book for a new mother in our church. And so I bought the other ones because I only had to pay shipping once. Yes. So that's how I ended up with all of those books. I know I'm kind of like a fanatic, but that's why I have them all.
Hey, no, I mean, and in the long run, think of the money that it saves you by not having to run to the doctor all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, moving from health to, and I feel like all of these topics we could just totally get lost in and talk about forever. But we're going to move on to homeschooling. And this is just going to scratch the surface. But I wanted to share 3 here that really have just been so transformational in my homeschooling. And the first one, this is a Sally Clarkson book. This is A Waking Wonder. Sally Clarkson has such an interesting take on education that I feel like has become a lot more accepted, especially as kind of the Charlotte Mason ideals have been revived a lot. But when she started out, people did not, well, one, people weren't really homeschooling. Two, people did not homeschool the way that she saw. So she very much was a pioneer in some of these ideals. But this book, Awakening Wonder, is called Opening Your Child's Heart to the Beauty of Learning. And just the options that we have as homeschoolers. I was homeschooled as a child, but we used a traditional box set curriculum, and it was literally school at home. I mean, the video that I watched was a Christian school classroom. I had a great education. I'm thankful for it. And it's what my parents knew to do at the time. They knew they wanted to homeschool, and that was the only thing they knew of. We have so many options today, and homeschooling can be so beautiful and so perfectly tailored to your family, to your needs, to your family culture, to your children. And that's really what this helped me realize is I am parent. I have the freedom to homeschool how we feel is best. And it really kind of opened that box for me. And she talked so much about this love of learning. How if you can give your child a love of learning, a love for books, a love for reading, they're really unstoppable because that's not something that they graduate from at 18. That is something that they carry through the rest of their life that will serve them well. And she goes into just so much. I actually I forgot. I got to be on the launch team for this book and just be one of the many people that helped her get it out into the world. But it is marked up, it's highlighted. But I would encourage every homeschooling mom to read this. It's so refreshing to just, again, like I said, Sally Clarkson is so encouraging. And just to come to homeschooling, sometimes we can feel like, oh, am I doing this right? Am I enough? And, we have all these questions of our ability to do this, but that really just helps you just love your kids, give them a love for learning, let them see that in you and pursue that. Sally Clarkson loves books, which kind of leads me into the next one, The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie. So I read this early on in my motherhood journey, and I wouldn't say this is just a homeschooling book. I think really every parent, anybody that works with children really could benefit greatly from this book. I love books, obviously, that's why we're here. And I love reading to my children, but very much in my mindset, I thought, you read to your little ones, and then once they learn to read, they read for themselves. That's what I did. We did not read aloud as a family, but this kind of challenged against that and said there is never an age where you are not perfect for a read aloud. And so we started doing that more as a family, making that a part of our family culture, reading books aloud together. And it has been one of the sweetest aspects of our home. I love the inside stories that allows us to share, the characters that we have laughed with, cried with, that we have grown from. We read The Railway Children a while back out loud. I read it to the kids, and Eden picked it up just the other day. She reread through it. And she came to a passage that I had underlined about how men are to treat women. And it was so good. And she read it out loud and she was like, this is really good. And I was like, I remember reading that, but it's just the lessons that come from literature, from rich literature, are so great. Simeon has read books aloud to our family. Treasure Island was one. And they read that like 3 or 4 years ago, and they still talk about that probably at least once a month. It comes up in conversation, which is funny. When you start reading this rich literature, you realize, wow, it pops up in so many aspects of culture, but they still, talk about that story and the characters and things that they learned, and they have such sweet memories. And that's what I would love. I'd love for my kids to leave home and remember all of us cozying up, reading these stories together. We're currently reading Little House on the Prairie. And we finished reading it at lunch. And next thing I know, off my girls go, and they have kind of some old fashioned dresses. They put them on, and they were Laura and Mary. And can we help you in the kitchen? Like Laura and Mary help Mom. And I was like, absolutely. So it's so fun. But The Read Aloud Family is just such a good book on the benefits of reading aloud, why that's so important for family culture. And then in the back, she has book lists of all these books that she recommends. And that's Sarah Mackenzie's thing, is books. So she is very well read. And so I've gotten a lot of great recommendations from her. Last one is the Charlotte Mason Companion. I have you to thank for this, Sarah. You actually connected me with Karen Andriola, and I've heard of her. I've had her books on my to-read list for a long time, but you connected us, and she was so sweet to send me a box that felt like Christmas morning. It had 3 of her books in there and a handwritten note from her that I was like, I am saving this. So it was very special. But I am kind of new to digging deeper into Charlotte Mason. I've been aware of it, but just didn't really dive much into it. But this book is so good, especially if maybe you come to some of Charlotte Mason's writings and you feel like, oh, it might be a little heavy just with the writing style and the time of life that she lived. Karen Andriola really kind of helps represent that a little more for a modern day. But I also love that her chapters are very brief, but they are specific. Like if you want the chapter on literature, it's here. History, Shakespeare. This book is where I decided that we were going to dive into Shakespeare this year. But it really opened up my mind to the beauty of the Charlotte Mason method and just the potential that it can hold to do those things like I talked about earlier. Inspire a love for learning. Take your kids from the drab of curriculum and bookwork. There's a place for that. But I don't think that should solely be education. And so she really helped challenge my thinking on what an education could and should look like. And I've really enjoyed implementing some of that into our homeschooling. So you're more Charlotte Mason exposed and influenced into your homeschooling than even I am. So I don't know, you probably could second the motion there for that book, but
yes, it's so good. In fact, I have Mother Culture. So what you said Awaking Wonder did for you, that's what Mother Culture did for me years ago. It was my first introduction into beautiful, rich homeschooling. And at the time, we were doing a DVD box curriculum, and it was not working. And I was trying to figure out what we're going to do because I thought this is not the point of homeschooling. At least for our family, it was not the point of homeschooling. The point of homeschooling was not you sit in front of the DVD and all day long for 6 hours and then do all these millions of paperwork. That's not what I wanted it to be. But I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I just knew that this was not good for homeschooling, because homeschooling, you're supposed to have this freedom to be able to tailor to each child, and Mother Culture opened up that Charlotte Mason world to me. And then from Mother Culture, I went to that book. And then a few years later, it went to Awaking Wonder. And again, Awaking Wonder was a reinforcement of everything that I had already learned. And it just reminded me, yes, this is what we're doing. This is what I want. This is the direction that we're heading. And you're right. I mean, just today, I love our curriculum so much. And I love the, I know people are all poo-poo Shakespeare and all that kind of stuff. And it's not like our second graders are reading like the actual Shakespeare plays. You can do the Mary Lamb ones, and there's just so many, but they're so beautiful and rich. And it's just so fascinating because my daughter will read all of these books that she absolutely loves that are written by people who are knowledgeable in this history. And it all pops up, like everything you're reading about, it pops up in the books that she's reading. And in fact, this is more history, but she's going through, she's reading some Edith Nesbit. Edith Nesbit is a wonderful children's author. I can't remember which book it is she's reading right now, but she had it playing down here just not too long ago before we got on here. And it said something about Guy Fawkes. It was a Guy Fawkes Day. And we both were like, oh my goodness. It's been a year or two since we read about it, but it was so the way it was presented, that was so meaningful. And honestly, I do not ever remember learning about that when I was in school. So another beautiful thing about the Charlotte Mason homeschooling is that the mother learns with her children, and it's just so good, so good. So that was so mother culture. And then you mentioned Awakening Wonder, and piggybacking on Awakening Wonder is the Clarksons. That's their name, right? Clarkson? That's sounding really off right now. That's funny. Okay, anyways, yes, Sally Clarkson, that's right. So her husband and her wrote Educating the Wholehearted Child.
Yeah.
And so basically, I think that basically takes Awakening Wonder and just in detail. Everything is super, super, super in detail. So that was another one that was just really helpful. I guess more on like, this is how you do it. If you want to do it this way, this is how you do it. And that's kind of how that was. I mean, there's forms and everything in there. It's really in depth. But if you're interested in that kind of in depth of a book, that's wonderful. But Awakening Wonder is it's so good.
It is. All right, Sarah, we are almost to the end here. We are going to wrap up talking about books, not necessarily for our children, but with our children. Just sharing maybe one or two favorite family read alouds. And then you have a question I think you're going to ask me at the end that I have prepared for. Favorite family read alouds. I was not going to talk about this one, but it just came to mind. And I have to mention it. Carry On, Mr. Bowditch is so good. First of all, every boy, man needs to read that book. But really, every girl should read the book too. It is so good. It's kind of a historical fiction story based on a true story. But it follows this boy into manhood and the challenges that he faces in life, the sorrow that he faces in life, the things that he overcomes. Talk about a love of learning and a love of books. Nat Bowditch had it. It is so inspiring, so much moral character, even character growth and development as he goes through different seasons. I could not say enough about this book. It is gold, like so much so. So we all listened to it on audiobook. Simeon was so taken with it too, that one of the young men in our church, I think he got it for him for his 18th birthday. He was like, this is what you need for your 18th birthday. I don't know if he appreciated it, but there was a heart behind it because it is such a good story with so much lesson to learn. So Carry On, Mr. Bowditch is fabulous. But I think probably the read aloud, and there are so many good ones. Oh my goodness, it was hard. But I think the one, I hope it has meant as much, it hasn't meant as much to my children as it's meant to me, just because they're little. But I hope that as they grow and they reflect, that they will be so grateful that we spent the time reading this. And that is Little Pilgrim's Progress by Helen Taylor and revisioned by Joe Stutfin. I have read through this twice with my kids, and both times I have just blubbered my way through this book. So it is just basically this story, Pilgrim's Progress, but it's redone a little simpler for children. They use animals instead of people, but it is absolutely beautiful. The lessons in this book are so rich. They are so full of biblical truth. The part where Faithful is martyred for his faith, every time I get to that, I cry through the entire chapter. The depth of his character, his love for the king, his complete loyalty and devotion, even in the face of giving up his very life. That part, and then the last part when they are crossing the river. They're crossing the river. They've made it through their journey. This is the last thing. The celestial city is on the other side. And there is fear there because they know this river is going to overtake me. But the king is with them. And he's not just with them. He is there waiting to receive them with open arms. And it's so beautiful. And, my older ones, the second time reading this through, they, I think, understood a little better, like, why Mom was crying. But I remember the first time we read it, and they were literally like, why are you crying, Mama? And I was like, God is so good. Our King is so good. And we get to be his pilgrims, and he is with us, and he will never fail us. Even when the wolves come, and the giants come, and the struggles come, makes your soul burn with a passion for our King of Kings. And so that is one that has just, every time I open that book with my family, I'm like, this is like a holy moment. This is beautiful. This is why we read aloud as a family. So if you have not read that one, that book deserves a place on every shelf or on a shelf in every home.
Yeah. It's interesting because when E was your kid's age, when she was real little, we found that book on Hoopla, but it's not animals. It's so that book is because it says, can you show me the front of that really quick? It says it's
envisioned and illustrated by Joe Stutphin. So does he redo this?
So, yes. So Helen Taylor is the author of Little Pilgrim's Progress. And E and I read that book together. Same, all the feelings that you were just explaining. It's an actual book called Little Pilgrim's Progress, but it's children and not adults.
Okay, so that makes sense. So Joe Stutphin redid it with animals. Okay.
And so we had read that book a couple of times. And when he came out, so we were just a few years ahead of you, and this book was not out yet. But when that book came out, I think my daughter was in 2nd grade. And I saw that it was coming out and I thought, oh my goodness, this looks so good, because she knew the Little Pilgrim's Progress story already, but then to reimagine it as animals. And she was one of those children who love any kind of books about animals, Mona Mouse and all Brambley Hedge, all of those books. She loves them. So when that came out with the animals, it was so, so good. And I think they have another one too in that series, the Christmas one.
Yes. So he did A Christmas Carol. We actually got that. It came out 2 years ago, and we've read it both Christmases since. Yeah. And he did another one called The King's Cadet, which is really just a little chapter book, more reader for a kid. But it continues on kind of after the Christiana stories with some of those characters. So my son really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. So that is that one was a favorite read aloud for us too. It's so good. And it's funny because that crying when you're reading aloud never changes, because I'm telling you, because I mentioned that we did. So she's pushing 13 now. So we're not reading so much of the children's books anymore, but we just did, I told you we did the climbing and How I Know God Answers Prayer. And it's the same thing. I'm trying to get through it without crying, and oh my goodness. But we're currently reading through one called Stepping Heavenward by Mrs. Prentice. And this is a book that I read in high school, and I could not wait. It was one that I couldn't wait to start with, E. And the crazy thing is I have no idea what happened to my copy that I had in high school. So I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then I saw someone mentioning it recently, and I thought, oh, yes. So I went on what is the bookstore called? The Thrift Books. I went on there and got a copy for us to read aloud. And we've been going through, we're not super far in it yet, but this is an excellent book. This is a really good book to read with your teenage girls together. Really good. But it's a really good book to read on your own. And it's just, it is a fictional journal of Catherine, a girl named Catherine, and her basically coming of age, but then it goes into her adult years and goes into her motherhood and stuff. And did I already say it's a journal?
I think so, yeah.
So she's journaling, and I mean, we were 2 pages in and I was already holding back the tears, because the mother-daughter relationship is just so much like ours. And it was just, we needed it. I mean, we need it, but it's so good. I mean, same thing. We're going through, oh my word, that was so good. We got to underline. So I'm going through underlining it, the really good parts, and then in hopes that, because usually what happens is when we read a book aloud, or same thing with audiobook, she wants the book so that she can go back and revisit it. So I'm hoping it will be one that she revisits all through her high school years. And same thing, just so convicting. So, well, I know that was a lot, but as we wrap it up, I messaged you and I said, we have got to answer this question. This is so fun. So my question for you and for myself too, if we have time, what are 5 books you cannot wait for your children to read? Because we know that there's books that are just that we've read that are just a little bit too far above their level. And we just, oh my goodness, I cannot wait till you get to enjoy this so we can talk about it or enjoy it together, because that's so fun too.
Absolutely. Well, I was thinking about it, and we have an interesting dynamic in our home because our kids are all spaced pretty well equally, but we kind of look at it like we've got our older two, and even the third is kind of joining the older group, and we've got our younger group. So there are some things that I thought, oh, I can't wait to read this. I'm like, well, technically we've already read that, but I don't think the younger set appreciated that. So we'll get to revisit that. Chronicles of Narnia was one of those that came to mind that we've read, the littles just over their heads. So I can't wait till we get to revisit that. But I was trying to think of books we have not read. What do I want to introduce? And I asked my husband, I was like, what would you say? 5 books. And he's like, that's so easy. The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King, and The Silmarillion. So you can tell exactly who he enjoys reading. He's actually read The Hobbit to the older two. They read that last year. But he cannot wait to introduce them to Lord of the Rings. I feel like it's darker and more heavy than the Chronicles of Narnia, so we're waiting for those little bit older years. But that's coming down the pike. That would be Simeon's answer. My answer, a couple things I thought of. Wing Feather Saga. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I think it's in that Waking Wonder book where Sally Clarkson talks about finishing one of their books on the mountain or something under the stars on a camping trip or something. So that always brings, nice feelings. Talking about
camp. I mean, I think if you can make the experience of reading The Lord of the Rings to the kids better in Simeon's mind, it would be doing it on a mountain under the stars while camping. So that sounds like the perfect.
Yes, reading aloud around a campfire is the best. We've done that before. Yes. Oh, it's so fun. Anyway, sorry.
And I love the idea. I heard somebody share one time about attaching a book to a vacation. So whether you're driving to the beach and you pick an audiobook and like, this is the book we're going to listen to, or you're camping and this is the book we're going to read around the fire. I love that because then in their memories, it starts becoming, hey, you remember the camping trip where we read Sweep? You remember, and that just adds a whole nother fun level to family culture.
Yeah.
Anyway, 5 books. I can't wait. The first one is the Wing Feather Saga. I devoured those books actually right before we moved here. I should have been packing, but I needed a break. So whenever I needed a break, you would find me curled up in the chair, just reading as fast as I could. Those were very good.
And my also, sorry to cut you off. I did not know when we first started. Number one, the covers look weird, and then it starts with the what are those things called in that book? It's been a while since we've read them. The monsters in there. The lizard things. What are they called? I can't remember. But anyways,
I know what you're talking about.
It starts with those and they're gross. And I remember because we were listening to the audiobook because the audiobooks are epic. But we were listening to the audiobooks and I remember as a mother, because if we want to try something new or if E wants to try something new, we always do it together so that I can say yes or no, or we need to stop these. We can't finish this or whatever. But I remember at the beginning being like that, like, I don't know, this is really weird. But then the humans come in and add the human dimension of the story. And then it becomes more normal. And then it just gets better after that. And then by the end of the last book, it's just tears. I mean, it's just so good.
I mean, there's a good reason why it's probably one of the most popular children's series right now. I have decided to wait on that one for a little bit. My oldest is very sensitive. So yeah, you mentioned that there are some weird creature things going on. There's a little bit intense, kind of not necessarily like kidnapping, but like, taking children. And so there's a few elements that just, it needs a few years for us, but I cannot wait until that time comes. Another one is The Star-Lord Legacy by Chuck Black. You introduced me to this. I've been binging these on audio. I'm all caught up with all of the 8 that he's currently written. I think there's 12 total coming. But especially my son, I think he's going to love these because it brings in all of the space and, I kind of feel like it harkens to kind of just a Star Wars, Star Trek, Dune kind of, out in outer space, all these flying ships and weapons and everything. But it is very allegorical in going through really the story of the Bible overarching.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, again, a little more of a mature book, but I know that he is going to love it when that time comes. Another one is Bruchko by Bruce Olson. We were actually talking beforehand. I read this in college, and I think this is one of the first wild missionary stories that I read, where somebody went to like the deep jungles and had all of these crazy, disgusting, weird things happen to them. But to see, in spite of intestinal worms and guerrilla warfare and all of this stuff, God worked so miraculously through a man and in a man. And so that book was just, I've read it a few times. It's been over a decade, but it was so good. I can't wait to introduce that one to my kids. The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. That's another one that is just an astounding story of God's mercy, God's forgiveness, God's protection. And then this is one that I read with Eden. We read Little Women. I cannot believe, as an avid literature lover, and I was actually a literature major in college, I had never read Little Women before. I'd seen the movies, but I never read it until with Eden. And when I read it, I was like, Marmee is my favorite literary character ever. If I could be like Marmee, goals. And we just had the most delightful time reading through that together. So I've read it with her, but that is one I cannot wait to introduce to my younger girls when they get a little older.
All you Little Women.
Yes, all 4 of them.
That'll be fun. Yeah, so I was just thinking, I saw this book sitting here and thought, oh my goodness, I never mentioned Evidence Not Seen was one that was supposed to go under my read alouds. So this one's really, really good when your kids are, I don't know, 5th and 6th grade-ish, middle school age-ish. And even then, you know, there's some parts, it depends on how, like you said, how sensitive your children are. But let's see here. So books I cannot wait for my children to read, my daughter anyways. The Scarlet Pimpernel. All-time favorite classic right there. I love that book. I have read it so many times. I read it a lot when I was a teacher. I read it aloud to my students. I love that book so much. And then you mentioned Chuck Black. I have War of the Realms here on mine because she's a little older, and so she's enjoyed. We did the Star-Lord Legacy. We did all the other ones of his, but the War of the Realms, she actually listened to some of it because I was listening to it, so she overheard some. But I did not want her to go through. It's very. You said you read these, right?
I have not read those yet. No, those are on my to-read list.
Okay. These are so good. However, demon possession and stuff is part of the story. So I just wasn't quite ready for her to read that, especially that first book. The second book is not so much. So basically, the whole point of the stories is the spiritual warfare that is going on Earth that we cannot see, and it just makes it so real. It just really brings it to light because we forget there's so many things happening around us that we cannot see. And these books bring that to life. And there's the main character in the book, through an accident, gets like these really sensitive eyes, and he starts seeing like dark and light figures, and he doesn't know what they are, but of course it's angels and demons. And so the first half of the book kind of brings in that story on Earth, and then the second half of the book kind of brings the angel stories in heaven. So it's very obviously storytelling. We don't know, and he doesn't know, and he makes that very clear. I think Chuck Black is really good at doing that because all of his books are based on angel. Even the Kingdom series and the Knight series, all of that is based. They have the angels and the demons in there. They're just knights, they're different forms. These are more actual angels and demons,
Mhm.
angels of light and angels of dark, basically. And oh, by the time you get to the third book, so the first book is like what's happening on earth, the second book is what's happening in heaven, and then the third book kind of conjoins the two. Oh my goodness, they're so good. So I cannot wait for her to read the whole series. Like I said, she did catch parts of it, but another one is the Giver series. I am so excited to read those. Those are so good.
Yes.
They're mature. They're much more mature. So I would want her to be a little bit older. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're part of our curriculum actually at some point, because as far as the free reads, because it hits on so many of those classics. I would imagine those would be in there. But yeah, that whole series, a lot of people know about The Giver, but there's actually 4 books, and I just remember finishing The Giver and being like, that is it ends so weird. It like just drops off. I mean, the story's just gone, but there is
But wait, there's more.
yeah, yes. So those are good. And then The Insanity of God, that was one that I had originally put into our faith books. But I actually moved it down here because I've been thinking about this for a long time. Actually, I cannot wait for her to read that. That one really challenged my faith. And similar to Bruchko or whatever that one's called. That one's really, that book is so good too. But this one, it's kind of 2 books in one. It's 2 kind of halves of his life. The first half, he's I would say on the mission field, but he's more like a what do you call it? He was a missionary, but he was in the country. He was in, I think it was Sudan that he was in, which is really war torn, and Muslim is in control, and people are getting killed. Like just if they are in contact with the preacher or the missionary, people are getting killed. Anyway, so the first half of the book is kind of his story and just how dark it was there, and then this big tragedy happens, and he comes to the point where he's just faced with the question, can God really actually work in a place like that? And the second half of the book is where he starts going to all of these different places, hard places. He eventually, communist countries and different places that there's been persecution and all kinds of things. And he realizes, wow, look at how God works in these places. And anyways, I cannot wait to read that I want to revisit myself again. So probably when I go to revisit it again, she's going to do it with me. We'll just do it together, because it is so good. And I just remember getting to the end of that book and just really just bawling. And several points in that book were just so, I mean, when the Chinese get the Bible, or like the pages of the Bible for the first time, because they only had one or something, and they all had to share the pages, and just the heartfelt love and just bawling their eyes out because they just have never had access to the Bible before. And anyways, so good. So, and I can't remember, was that my 1, 2? Yeah, that was 5. I guess I had 6 here, but anyways, yeah. So that's too long, but also good.
Well, if you're looking for books to add to your to read list, I think we delivered, Sarah.
And I need to add them back to my to-read list too, because I need to revisit all of these again.
It's time to circle back around. Well, Sarah, this is so fun. Thank you once again for joining me and sharing things that have really impacted you, influenced you, books that you love. This has been such a fun conversation.
Yes, always love talking, and especially when we get to talk about books.
Absolutely. Well, I will look forward to next time, Sarah.